torture chambers, secret passageways, vats of acid, and deadly vaults. In 1895, Chicago police unearthed horrific evidence of torture and multiple murders at the sprawling castle of H. Holmes. Masquerading under the guise of caring doctor, kind husband, and prominent businessman, H. Holmes was a contemporary monster, designing his buildings solely for the disposal of human bodies. Torture Doctor, Monster of 63rd Street. H. Holmes was America's first serial killer.
Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or H. Holmes, was America's first serial killer, and is the subject of more than 50 lawsuits in Chicago alone. He chose a career of crime including murder, insurance fraud, check forging, and horse theft. Yes, you heard it right, horse theft. Despite his confessions of 27 murders, he was sentenced for one murder, that of his business partner Benjamin Pitzel, even though it's believed he also killed 3 of Pitzel's children. So yes, this guy was a psychopath, if you already didn't know. Holmes was executed on May 7, 1896, 9 days before his 35th birthday. Holmes was born on May 16, 1861 to Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price. He is said to suffer abuse at the hands of a violent father, but there is not enough evidence to prove that. Holmes was enrolled in the University of Vermont of Burlington at age 18, but left 1 year later and went to the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery, and graduated in June 1884. This was the first time he committed a crime where he used cadavers to defraud life insurance companies several times in college. Now this is where the real action begins, baby. Holmes arrived in Chicago in August 1886, which is where he began using the name H. Holmes. He worked in Holton's drugstore at the northwest corner of South Wallace Avenue and West 63rd Street in Englewood, eventually buying the place from him. He then bought an empty lot across from the drugstore, where construction began in 1887 with the first floor, a drug storefront, and the second floor for apartments. He then built a third floor as a hotel for the upcoming World's Columbian Exposition, but it was never finished. It is said that he built the building to lure in visitors and kill them to sell them to medical schools. This is likely just journalists hyping things up as they usually do for money. In fact, most of his victims are not strangers. He also had a factory where it's speculated to have been used to destroy evidence of Holmes' crimes. The crime Holmes was charged for was the murder of Benjamin Pitzel. When Holmes tried to fake his death to take money from the insurance company, they refused to give him the money as they were suspicious of him, so he teamed up with Pitzel to fake his death, but Holmes actually killed him, even though that was not the plan. He then manipulated Pitzel's wife into allowing 3 of her 5 children to be placed in his custody. They traveled to Canada while Mrs. Pitzel took a parallel route with her 2 other children, while thinking that Pitzel was hiding in London. But the most audacious and bold move was that, while in Detroit before entering Canada, Holmes was staying with his wife, who was unaware of the whole affair going on. He was then finally arrested in Boston on November 17, 1894, after being arrested for horse theft. They later figured out he murdered the Pitzel family and was paid $7,500 to confess, which turned out to be nonsense. A famous quote he wrote in prison was, "I was born with the devil in me."
I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer any more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing. Bury me deep, Your Honor.
He was then killed on May 7, 1896, and this is where the story ended of the first serial killer of America. Subscribe for more.